Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Heilman and Haver in the Mix. Welcome back. It's been a while.
Is this our first of 2022?
I think it probably is.
Wow.
Yeah, and long overdue.
Yeah.
I think, right?
Yeah. Not that the intention hasn't been there, but
Yeah. There's been COVID. There's been vacations. There's been all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But we're glad to be back. We're glad you're with us, and we're going to be talking stage and screen and honoring a very influential director of stage and screen, which is pretty cool. Be able to talk about both sides. Elia Kazan today.
one of the best. Yeah.
And what do you have for us?
So I spent hours trying to figure out what cocktail to make. I tried looking for Elia Kazan's favorite drink. I tried looking for an on the waterfront drink, or
You'd think there'd be one of those.
you would think, yeah, or any specific. Now there's whiskey and just there's alcohol in these movies, but they're not really cocktails that in the sense that we think about them. A lot of them shots of whiskey or whatever. But what I did find is the East of Eden cocktail, which has absolutely nothing to do with East of Eden, but it
The
gives us,
1955 film by Elia Kazan, starring James Dean and others.
which is the only. I guess we're going to talk about the trivia later. Which
Yeah.
great film. James Dean, just one of those guys that the Gone Too Soon thing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, this gives us a chance to talk about tequila, because I don't know that we've ever really done a tequila drink.
We've done them, but not for in the mixes.
Yes, that's for sure.
We've done them together, I'm sure.
And it was probably part of the Alaskan polar bear heater, as everything was.
I think probably so, yeah.
The entire liquor cabinet was in there. But this gives, like I said, this gives us a chance to talk about tequila. It's the East of Eden, which is a derivation of the Eden cocktail. And there's a few of those as well. They're all based around Elderflower Liqueur, kind of that herbal liqueur that I guess they're associating with Eden, Garden of Eden, that kind of thing.
It's very fragrant.
And East of Eden being a take on Cain and Abel, kind of there's that religious tie-in too. So I guess you could, make a case for it being related to the movie, at least, adjacently. So
It is now.
Yes.
It is once we've done it.
yeah, there you go. We are trendsetters.
That's right.
So tequila. So there's a few different types of tequila. This one uses Reposado Tequila. There's also Blanco Tequila and Añejo Tequila, and that all the differences between them are how long they're aged. Blanco Tequila isn't aged at all. Reposado Tequila is aged anywhere between 1 and 12 months, like 1 month to a year. And Añejo is aged longer than a year. So, and they're aged in oak barrels, American oak barrels. So there's a different taste. Reposado has a little bit more of a deeper taste. Most of your tequila drinks, you're going to use Blanco, more than likely. There's also Mezcal, which is a little bit different, they're both from the agave plant. Mezcal is our creator distilled using earthen kind of oven, natural thing. Gives you a little more smoky taste, a little more of an earthen taste than the tequilas. But this drink we're using the Reposado Tequila, so that's the one
Kind of
that's
right in the middle.
right in the middle. Yeah. And I like it. To me it's easier to drink just on its own than the Blanco. All right, cool. So we will start with our Reposado Tequila. We're going to use 2 ounces of that. I'm going to use a little more since there's more than one of us. Keep it coming, keep it coming. But you can already tell, just pouring it smells different than the
Yeah, it certainly does.
your typical tequila you're used to. So then we're going to use a few ounces, 1 ounce per drink of the Elderflower Liqueur.
This is where the real fragrance comes from. I think we've used this in a few
We
drinks
have.
in the
I
past,
don't
haven't we?
remember which drink we have, but yeah, we definitely have.
Go back and watch all the videos. You'll find it.
And then 3/4 of an ounce per drink of lemon juice. I'm being lazy and using store-bought lemon juice instead of squeezing all the lemons. And then, though I did make my own simple syrup, so I guess I could say
Hey, all right.
I did something.
Doubles as hummingbird food this time of year as well,
Yes.
right?
Well, a little bit different concentration. Simple is 1-to-1.
That's right.
Don't give that to your
Hummingbirds,
hummingbirds.
1 to 4. 1 to 4 people. You're going to hurt their little livers, which is what we're going to do ourselves here in a minute. What do you think your favorite tequila drink is? Haven't had this one yet, but
No, we had the Paloma, right?
Yes.
So that was the tequila drink.
that was at the Seattle Film Summit,
Yes,
wasn't
we
it?
did.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's also coming up in it's
September.
gonna be September soon
Yeah.
enough, right? Man, months have flown by.
All right. So let's go ahead and shake this. This is our tequila, our elderflower liqueur, our lemon juice, and our simple syrup. A little violent shake here. All right.
I saw you preparing the garnish a little earlier. What?
Yeah, so we're
what are you
using to
garnishing with?
garnish.
Is it
We're gonna.
mint?
It is basil.
Really?
Yeah, so we're gonna have a
It's a
couple
little large for mint leaves.
couple splashes of Angostura Bitters. Here is a float. As I spray that all over the sink. Angostura Bitters, can't have a bar without them. And we pop a couple of Basil Leaves in there. There you go, sir.
All right. It's a nice presentation.
This is
Oh
the
yeah.
East of
Spicy.
Eden.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, cheers.
Cheers. I like that.
That's good.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really fragrant.
Yes. The basil helps along with the elderflower liqueur, obviously.
Yeah, and but you don't. It's not overpowering. The taste isn't overpowering, but the scent is very.
And it's not too.
Almost like a little
tequila-y.
nutmeggy. A little bit of nutmeg almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's delicious. Wow. Yeah, I can see that, or drinking that in the garden somewhere. A garden party,
Absolutely.
you know, patio party. Those are coming up too, hopefully.
Oh yeah,
Soon.
hopefully. Well, we're out of
We're in May
COVID.
already.
People are starting to get together. I know our friends, Gary and Christiane have their outdoor Shakespeare.
Right, it's coming up. Yeah, watch for a video on that soon.
Yep. So, yeah, things are. It's nice to be getting back together and getting outdoors and just doing things.
Yeah, yeah. This definitely puts you in the summertime mood, which
Yeah.
is just a few weeks away. Well, part of the things that most people love about East of Eden was really the cinematography. It was a really beautifully filmed movie, and it's neat to see how Kazan was so he was so easily able to transfer himself, really, in his skill set from the stage to the screen. And I know one of our favorite things to do with our friend Dan Estes is to watch movies and talk about whether they would be able to do that same transfer from stage to screen.
Yep.
And when you start thinking that way, when you watch films, you kind of start noticing this maybe was a play, or it could very easily be a play depending on the set. And one of the best gifts I've gotten recently is this book on Kazan. Kazan on Directing, with a foreword by John Lahr. It's just selections from his diaries, letters to himself, and it's really split down the middle between stage and screen, and really interesting to read. And who did I get it from? But this guy here, for Christmas. It's almost a textbook. But I mean, as far as the folks that enjoy our videos, this is a must-have for anybody interested in directing.
Yeah. It doesn't look like an easy read. I mean, the print's tiny, so
I've been working on it.
As
Yeah,
you get in
yeah,
our
yeah.
advanced age, you might want to
That's
invest
right.
in some reading glasses. But
Yeah.
but I'll tell you, I mean, to be able to, and we've talked to enough people who have experience in both film and stage, and how challenging it is
Yeah.
to move from one to the other or work in both. Yeah, it's just a completely different set of skills, and Kazan seems to just knock it out of the park.
Well, it's interesting because in here. There's a lot of letters and things, and he signs them Gadge, Gadge. It was his nickname, and it was a shortening of Gadget, because Kazan was short and handy to have around, apparently. So that was his. We're not going to call him that. We don't know him on a first name basis, but that's I like that. That's what he went to by
cool.
to his
Yeah.
friend. His friends knew him as. So, yeah, small and handy to have around. If he's a new name to you, he was really the preeminent director of works, especially by Arthur Miller and Tennessee Williams. I've been trying to read the Tennessee Williams plays before I read the chapters in here, so that's why it's taking me twice as long to read.
The academic approach.
Yeah, exactly. And Kazan was kind of the go-to guy for those two playwrights for sure. And he also, as part of the method acting, for lack of a better term, method acting crowd in New York, he really was a trailblazer when it comes to really truthful and emotionally raw performances. Obviously, we think of people like Marlon Brando. He worked with on Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway, and then again in Hollywood. And then films like East of Eden with someone like James Dean, who fashioned himself a new Brando.
Yeah.
Very raw, emotional person. So emotional that the Kazan said he was a little disturbed. Not as disturbed. a different kind of disturbed than Brando. James Dean was sick. Brando was just bothered, or something like that. But an interesting guy. And East of Eden was 1955. It's been a while since I've seen it. You said you've seen it, but it's also been a while.
Yeah, it's been a little while. I had it on my list to watch in advance of the show here. It just did not get around to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those that I'll watch again and again. On the Waterfront's another one of those. Just watch over and over again, because these films are so well directed and presented that you get something new out of it with each viewing.
Yeah, for sure. And another interesting thing specifically about Kazan and that movie, it was the first time he'd worked on color, and it's also the first time he'd used widescreen process. So what I like to think about, especially as you read some of these books, some of the TCM books we've gotten, they talk about these guys who bridge decades and all the technological advances that they had to learn and evolve with. It's just really fascinating. Another book I've been enjoying is by Sidney Lumet, and he talks about getting a single take on a train making Murder on the Orient Express, and how you had to just have it perfect, and the ability to do that and to jump from so easily even back and forth from stage to screen really is, I think, a tribute to these guys' skill.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
There's one thing that Kazan was not comfortable doing on East of Eden, and that was operating as a screenwriter. He was working with Steinbeck, John Steinbeck, author of the novel in 1952, one that he considered, and a lot of people consider his best. And Kazan just didn't feel up to the task. It was a tome. They just couldn't get anywhere, and so he said, bring in Paul Osborne. Paul Osborne was a screenwriter that recommended James Dean, and they thought that they should go with a little bit younger, unknown crowd, considering it, or a cast, because it has so much to do with youth, and youth, and just the opposition with the elders in their life, and so they brought in someone like Dean, and it worked really well. It was actually the only film that of his own that he ever got to see all the way through. The other two, he never got to finish.
This was the only one that was released during his lifetime, right?
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. So he was only able to see this one, and he was actually nominated for Oscars posthumously. And the guy just 3 movies is all, and passed away obviously tragically in a car accident. I think 24.
Yeah.
But again, lives on these films. He said Marlon Brando visited the set. And Dean was just, you think about it, a very confident guy, was like just a little kid around Brando. So, yeah, and Kazan goes back with Brando again all the way to Broadway. Stanley Kowalski on A Streetcar Named Desire, just a really raw, emotionally potent character. So that's the kind of people that he liked working with. Another interesting tidbit about, well, really kind of why, is he was raised in New York, native New Yorker. He joined first New York's Experimental Group Theater, with a few other names you would recognize, in the mid-1930s. And then in 47, he was actually the co-founder of the Actors Studio in New York. So as far as method acting, again, that's put quotations around what exactly that means. And he was really into casting, though. There's a wonderful quote in this chapter regarding casting. I really liked it, because he talked about there's a lot of natural animosity between Dean and Raymond Massey, who played his dad, and he encouraged it. And he said that the casting should really tell the story of the film without any words. So if you cast the right personalities, half the work's already done.
Yeah, that is an interesting perspective.
Yeah. And Kazan got carte blanche on casting. Jack Warner didn't even bother to read the Steinbeck novel. He just said, do it. So, yeah. So really
for Jack
talented.
Warner to give up control of anything,
right?
It says a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Speaks to Kazan's influence. Let's see here.
Did you get a sense of Kazan's involvement? And we talked to Sloan DeForest about when we talked to her about her book on directing, about the influence that directors have on all the aspects of the film. We talked about casting. How involved was he? Did you get a feel for that? How involved was he with some of the other aspects? He was quite involved, because again, he had carte blanche really to just cast anyone. And then the role that went to James Dean again was Paul Osborne. That was his kind of addition to it. And the interesting thing about the casting, Kazan was positive that Dean literally was this character. There was just a very razor's edge between the real Dean and this character Cal. And even Steinbeck agreed. He said,
He sure as hell was, and that was it. So, so yeah, I think, that's so much comes down to who's cast and in what roles. You listen to, you watch YouTube, you read books like this, and you hear all these different names that were up for these roles, and you think how different these films would have been. We wouldn't have known any difference, but how different they would have been. It really makes all the difference.
Yeah, in a lot of ways you can't say whether they'd be better or worse. They'd just be different, and and some of these, because we talked about, with Jeremy Arnold, we talked about Cary Grant and It's a Wonderful Life, and can you imagine that? Whole kind of. But it's like that with every movie, and we talk about that all the time when we do these about when we go through the trivia about all these different actors that were up for this role or were considered for it or backed out of it or whatever, and it always tends to work out the way it should.
Yeah, I suppose so. Interesting thing about Kazan, he was active for a very, very long time, but he's really most identified with his movies in the 50s, including East of Eden. And it rightfully so. He made 8 films. Streetcar Named Desire won 4 Oscars. If you haven't seen that one, rush out and find it online, I guess. Don't have to rush out anywhere anymore. Launched Brando on the world, big one there. And then On the Waterfront won 8, and including Best Director for Kazan and lead actor for Brando. And obviously still considered one of the finest films ever made, I think. In a lot of people's opinions, is right up there generally. It's a Wonderful Life, On the Waterfront.
Yeah, I would say, cause people talk about Citizen, and we've talked about Citizen Kane, the best movie ever. There's aspects of it that are by far the best, but I don't know, the cinematography in On the Waterfront and is right up there. I think the way he builds suspense and builds tension in his scenes is done really well, and you can see that throughout On the Waterfront.
He won his first Oscar, not for On the Waterfront, but for the movie All My Sons. That was based on another Arthur Miller play. Have you seen that one? I have not.
I have not, no.
Okay, and that was in 1947. And of course, and then another apologize, Tony Awards. Tonys. He did win 2 Oscars, but we've got to talk about the stage side too, obviously. He won 2 Tonys, both for Best Director in the 40s, one for Arthur Miller's All My Sons. Have you seen that on stage?
No.
Okay, I have not either. I'm sure it's also a film. I'm almost positive it is. And then, of course, for Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. Yeah. Have you seen that on stage?
I have not.
I have not either. Man, we are behind the times. So that was in 1949. But, I mean, literally too much to talk about this guy in, 20, 30 minutes, especially after drinking tequila.
Yeah.
But, East of Eden. Rent it. I think it's available on Amazon. I'm almost positive.
Yeah, or I think it's on demand if you've got TCM and you have either on demand or you stream and you have TCM as part of a streaming package, Hulu Live or YouTube TV or something like that. You should be able to find it.
Yeah. And another book that I also wanted to mention I used for resources for our research on Kazan was The Essential Directors. I'm really interested in directing, but this is, I think, an excellent read for anybody who's just kind of a history of Hollywood. And again, Sloan DeForest, our guest on episode 60, is the author of that one. Again, at TCM. A lot of great stuff coming out of TCM lately. Yeah. Some really cool books about old Hollywood from young authors.
Yeah.
Sloan's, Scott McGee's, Jeremy Arnold's of the world. So a lot of fun.
So you're interested in getting into acting. What have you picked up?
Directing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're interested in acting. You might try that someday.
I might try that. Yeah. Another time.
You were interested in directing. So have you picked up anything yet from Kazan that you think you would apply to directing when you get the opportunity?
Man, so much. That's it. The book is almost overwhelming that way. And I'm not a purist. I dog-ear pages and I even highlight sometimes. This is so heavy that it's dog-earing the first time you read it and then going back and highlighting. I really liked what he said about casting, really telling the story without using words, because I'm also big on casting. I think that'd be one of the most fun parts of directing. Can really make or break. He can have a great script and lousy actors, and it doesn't matter how good the script is. You can have a lousy script and great actors, and especially someone like Kazan and people like Sidney Lumet who liked improvisation, you can salvage it.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that in my review of Selling Kabul, which I just put up on our website
Seattle
today.
Rep, yeah.
That the play is written with relatable characters. But that's only half the battle. To your point, getting it, in this case, from page to stage or page to screen is all the actors. You know, it's enveloping themselves in that character and becoming that character. And yeah, it is important because those personalities have to be relatable. And if you cast the wrong person, somebody just can't relate to the character they're portraying. You can tell.
Yes.
You can tell when there's a dissonance between the actor and the character. And then on the other hand, you can tell when they just hit it right out of the ballpark.
Yeah. Yeah, so anybody interested again in directing? I can't remember I think it's Cindy Lumetta directing. That's the one at home. But The Essential Directors, The Art and Impact of Cinema's Most Influential Filmmakers, Sloan DeForest, and pretty cool. Forwards by Peter Bogdanovich and Jacqueline Stewart. A couple of names you might recognize. And then Kazan on directing. Kazan. Excuse. I found out it's Kazan.
Okay.
I went and I looked it up. It's Kazan because I think it's important that you get those types of things right. Elia Kazan on directing. Thanks to this guy. Go out and find your own copy, or shoot us a Facebook message or something. I might loan it to you. All of our local audience members. So, if you're interested in hearing from Sloan, that was episode 60, and then we've got a really exciting episode 62 coming up. Our last episode with John D'Elia was a ton of fun, episode 61, talking about actors who had created fully fleshed out characters in less than 10 minutes. Really, really fun look at a lot of different eras of films. But coming up on that's going to be Friday, May 13th, we're going to talk to George Stevens Jr. Speaking of directing, he's directed a lot of things. Not the type of directing his dad did. You might have heard of him, George Stevens. One of the big five directors of the 40s and 50s. But George Stevens Jr. made a name for himself as a founder of the American Film Institute and also the Kennedy Center Honors. So there's going to be a ton of stuff to talk to him about. He was just down at the TCM Film Festival giving out some awards and doing some appearances with Steven Spielberg, another guy who's done some directing.
A little bit,
so, yeah. Sensing a theme on this one. So
Spielberg is another guy from the 70s through the 2020s.
Right.
Some of these guys that just seem to be able to adapt and be agile in the way they make films.
And a guy who, again, has bridged the gap between, we talked to Scott McGee about stunt work and how, he used an example of the original Indiana Jones and the fact that you knew that was a real human being dragged onto that truck.
Yep.
And now, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
So we'll see how the next one is. But
yeah, and interesting you mentioned that because we talked about, and with James Dean, I don't know if it was episode in the single digits, and we talked about
way back
the AI and replacing actors, and we talked about this film that was supposed to have a computerized James Dean in it. I have to see whatever happened with that. I can't imagine anything really did. I haven't heard about it or seen it, but hopefully somebody else was wiser and pulled the plug on.
Something else that Kazan talks about in the book is that Dean was his nervous energy. It's very palpable, but he was crooked. He said he was just crooked. He walked crooked. And so Kazan encouraged that because it just really, again, just really fleshed out that character. But he just was. There was just something a little off.
Yeah.
And even about the way he moved. So, it's really, really great stuff. So it's fun to talk about someone as talented as Kazan. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see a whole lot of what James Dean did. But got 3 great films. East of Eden, easy enough to find, and definitely something to check out.
Yep, for sure.
And while you enjoy one of these, I think.
Yep. And we will post the recipe for this on our show notes.
Delicious. Great springtime drink.
It is.
Yeah. Happy spring.
Happy spring.
All right. Cheers. And to you guys.